Hey there! You're listening to Those Real Estate Brothers podcast, where Joseph and Jared share what they know in real estate and all things local, including local restaurants, businesses, and cool stuff. Which brother is more interesting? Well, you're about to find out.
Hello, Tiago.
What's going on, everybody? How are you?
So, Tiago Pereira,
Yep.
Weikert Franchise Sales. So, you work for Weikert Corporate. What is franchise sales? What does that mean?
Wow, we're getting right to it.
Right to it.
Oh, right to it. Well,
I'm excited. We got to talk about plastic bags and World Cup.
So I wanted to first, what I kind of do is basically bring new affiliates onto Weikert, showing them what Weikert has done throughout its 53 years and basically introduce them to a new way of a brokerage.
How many times you say that?
That was pretty practice. You're good.
Is that good?
I think it was good.
You should use that again.
Well, listen, I only say that I think I'm the Weikert greeter, really, because at these events, you know, I'm supposed to like, hey, everybody, we're about to start 5 minutes in and everybody's grabbing their Starbucks coffee. So I only say that I'm the Weikert greeter.
They always give those jobs. So Weikert's a nationwide company. It's across the country. But they always give those kinds of jobs, like get back in the room with starting to the New Yorkers, don't they? Or the Northeasterners, at least.
Well, I guess so. I thought I was privileged to have that position, but I guess not.
Y'all, would you mind heading into the room?
Well, Les always goes, hey, T, you have the loudest voice, so if you don't mind bringing them in, right? But listen, the hardest thing to do is when they're having a coffee or they're not ordering a coffee. And I'm like, listen, can I bring that coffee to you? But they always delay it.
Seeing you in the South reminds me of the new show, Tulsa King.
Well, I haven't watched it.
So you've been on a run. You've been selling a lot of franchises. I would credit you a little bit, but also you're selling a good product. I mean, we are Weikert franchise owners, Joseph, and we find that what they say they actually do, and they implement things rather quickly when we ask for some help or some products. But you've been on a run. I don't know how you would do in other parts of the country. Imagine him going to a southern broker trying to sell a franchise. Would your pitch change, Tiago?
It would not change, and I'll tell you guys why. Listen, so I've been doing this for over 20 years, right? A brand basically gives you systems and support, right? So I'm selling systems and support over a particular brand. Now, I do believe in this brand, right? Because it shows you from the ground up. So this for a beginner brokerage or a brokerage that's not making money, I think this is the best pitch you can do. You know what I mean? So to me, it's not sort of a job or a position. I really do believe that Weikert has something that other brands do not have.
You got to believe in what you sell, right? You can't sell something you don't believe in.
Getting your foot in the door has got to be the hard part. When you get somebody's undivided attention, we can see the conviction, I'm sure, when you're selling and basically saying, I believe in this product and you should too. But how do you get the audience to have that conversation?
So you got to have a lot of data to come back to any brokerage, any business that's out there, right? You got to know what your product is and you got to know what the market's doing. If you're just going in there to wing it, guess what, guys? 9 out of 10 are going to say, hey, come back another time. I'm too busy. Now, if you present an offering, something that's valuable, and showing them something that they haven't seen, they go, you know what? I got that extra 5 minutes to you. Now, that 5 minutes really turns into an hour conversation. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not there to sell you at that point. I'm just trying to find out what you do. You know what I mean? What's your why? Once I find your why, I could figure out a lot of things.
You only get that hour if they have some interest. Even if for the hour they tell you, well, I would never franchise and here's why. But they're not talking to some stranger for an hour because they have no interest in it.
So I tell everybody, this is not a franchise. This is an affiliation partnership, okay? Yes, it's kind of containing the same words, right? But a franchise tells you that, hey, you got to put on these black shoes, these brown shoes, these type of socks.
Because that's how most franchises are.
Exactly. We do not do that. No. So I tell everybody, listen, you're basically, we're lending you a Weikert name with your company, but without your company name, Weikert's nothing. Let's figure. We can't put an office everywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? Without your name. You know what I mean? But before we get there, we have to figure out, hey, is this something good for you and something good for us?
Yeah, it's got to work both ways. I know when Weikert approached us, you know, the first meeting was all about why we would never. And then we were like, well, maybe we should have at least heard a little more and thought about it a little more. And then by the time we did the meet and greet in New Jersey, we had already decided we were going to do it. And Jared, we talk about this story. You, me, and my father were at Ruth Chris. Weikert was taking us out to dinner, and we all ordered the same wine and the same steak. Well, why? That's kind of weird. Independently, we all ordered the cheapest thing on the menu because we're trying to show our best foot, not realizing they were selling us, but we wanted to make sure we got it. But it's the beginning. Once they decide, once they go that far, you got a pretty high conversion ratio, but it's getting that initial, finding the person who's interested, isn't it?
So I'm going to tell you guys this, right? Even going, so I love all of the action, right? Finding out their why, finding about their families, finding about, what's next for them, right? So if it wasn't for your father, then it was for one of you guys, right? So I always say this, right? If it's not for you guys, who is it for then? Is it for one of your kids, right? So you're always trying to find out that why, right? And then trying to create a value of that why, right? What would create more value to your name, right? So revenue is always in there, yep. Right? The conversations, right? So the reason I'm telling you this is because even if I find that why, and then you come to tours or you come in for a leadership academy, right? To figure out how to sell this Weicker. It's not like, hey, flip of a switch and we're Weicker, we're going to make a lot of money. No, there's a lot of training that gets involved in this, right? So I just had this one particular person in Lancaster, which we're about to launch, by the way. Really cool guy. I like him a lot. And he goes like this, AT, I was sold before, but now I'm sold even more. And he just went to the Leadership Academy, not listening to anybody else, but just listening to what the systems and tools were there to offer to him. And then he said, man, I'm gonna light this thing up. That is what makes my excitement of my why.
I think, Jared, when you're independent and you don't have that, and then you see all the stuff you're going to have access to, it's like mind-blowing. It's like, oh my God, this is I'm in a place I never thought I could have gotten on my own.
And it's also something that we were probably chasing is we wanted to be part of something bigger. So we were an independent company. I think it's the same way a real estate agent decides they want to work with a certain brokerage.
It's all the same thing.
And we wanted to be part of something a little more. And each level we got, the next person we met within the organization, the next layer, the next dinner, the next meeting, we liked it even more. And I think that's the start of a good relationship, is just to start, right? Figure out why it might be beneficial for someone to maybe join a brokerage or buy a Weicker franchise. And then each step of the way, it should get better and better and sweeter and sweeter.
So you bring me up a good point, right? And I hear a lot of agents, right? So agents are all across, right? The ones that are doing well, they don't really need any type of leadership. They just continue to do their path, right? Years of experience kind of counted, right? But then I get the ones that I'm like, hey, I work for this exciting company, but I'm not really making any money.
Right.
Well, those are the ones that should consider what are they doing with their lives, right?
Well, those are probably the agents that are chasing those really cool teams, right? Going out, cocktail hours, but you don't pay your bills with the amount of cocktails you drink per night.
Well, that's what I always tell everybody, right? Look, at the end of the day, you want to create some type of a nest egg, right? Where you're like, hey, I'm doing something. And the doing something means that my why could be opening up an office or starting something completely different. Well, if I'm not making scratch, then how am I going to create that? How am I going to get that why?
Right, you're not opening your first office as an agent if you're not making any money as an agent.
Listen, I've seen people, so in my life of experience, I've seen good agents, right, that didn't have any type of brokerage experience, right, opening up an office, right, and they're still basically working on this crazy business, meaning that they still got to hustle, they still got to go after the listings, they still got to go after the buyers, because they tell me straight out, hey, I can't trust any of my agents. And I'm going like, well, what kind of support you giving them?
Right.
And there's a big why, by the way. When you could take some, like a support or a system off someone's shoulders, I think you'll be able to breathe better at night.
It's also hard to recruit as a broker or manager if you don't believe you could train those agents, right? So, I know Weicker has sold franchises to brokers who were hoping their kids would become agents, and they felt like, well, I can't even train my own kid. How am I going to train other people? And Weicker, it's pretty well known for recruiting and training new agents.
Yes. So you have both sides, right? And I've seen that, right? And I've seen the other side where we actually have this cool office, by the way, in Queens Village, right? The Langers, right? So previously they were with a gold standard brand, by the way. And he basically told me, Jeff Langer, and I remember this, and he said, I don't want to train my kid. You know what I mean? I don't want to show him the bad habits. So listen, coming along, I mean, this office is actually doing pretty good. You know what I mean? They're happy. And they just got, I think Matt just has a new baby boy, by the way. So, hey, there's your next why, right? So I think that's the excitement.
If you're bad at recruiting, have lots of kids.
And when they got started, they remind us remind me a lot of how we were. You know, my father started the brokerage in 93?
95.
95. And over the years, he wanted to get a little less involved. And me and my brother kind of stepped up. And I think that's what they're kind of in the transition of doing.
So I'm going to tell you guys, there's a place in South Jersey. It's by Trenton. It's actually a nice area, you know, one of the little neighborhoods that they have right in Trenton. And I remember this old man, right? He was 80-something years old, a broker, didn't know how to give up. I remember when he died. You know what I mean? He didn't have anybody else to offer all of his expertise. And so I always tell everybody, if you haven't searched what your why is, then what are we doing here? Just passion?
Right.
Just passion? Because there's got to be something more than passion, right? So for me, it's legacy. How do I leave a legacy behind, right? How do I show what my ideas are to some other people?
It's all about building that business, because you could be in business without having a business, right? You have to, if you're going to have something, it was that book, Good to Great.
Good to Great. Yep.
The way you judge a leader is when they leave, what happens afterwards? Do they build that culture of, you know, mid-level managers and a great top manager team, or were they just the person and they did everything, which is, you know, a lot of times how that type A prototypical real estate broker we think of, right, is just they do everything. They're the rainmaker, but that doesn't necessarily make for a great business that survives that rainmaker.
That's correct.
And I think over the last couple of years, a lot of those successful agents that made a lot of money fall in that category because they didn't really have time to work, you know, on their business and getting systems in place because they were too busy playing whack-a-mole and closing deals all day long. How do we think this market, now that it's changing, is going to affect how brokers run their brokerages or how agents run their businesses?
Well, we know two things, right? So one, a lot of those really successful teams with lots of team members, it's all because the team leader was feeding them the deals and feeding them the leads. As that dries up, as that changes, you're going to see a lot of those bottom level team members just disappear.
And there's going to be that. There's a team leader right now that has 3 leads to give out and maybe 6 team members. And that team leader has to make a decision on who's going to get those leads. And there's going to be somebody at the bottom.
And there's no system to do it, because when you had 20 leads and 6 members, you just gave them out. It didn't really matter. Everybody was going to get some. Everybody was going to eat.
Everybody had something in their paycheck, right? But at the end of the day, I'm going to be like, am I not needed here?
And when you're busy, it's easy to pay your team members, because that happens. Like, hey, I'll give you $250 to go sit at this open house. Well, if you do 2 open houses a week, you know, that's $500, maybe a couple buyer appointments. Hey, I'm making $650 on a 1099 a week. You know, that pays some of the bills. And if I land on something great, that's going to dry up too.
I actually believe that's going to dry up, and that
probably
happened,
already
by
has.
the way. I don't see it yet, but it's starting to, that little needle's starting to turn. And
well, it's not going to happen like that
instantaneously.
Right?
Well, if you go back to 1999, guys, that's really what happened in the 2001. And then don't even get me started on 2007 and 2008, but that's kind of where the bubble started, was 1999, and it was just a ripple effect.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it couldn't stop it.
What you're seeing, though, is with less transactions and less buyer traffic, the market doesn't crash. The prices don't go down because there's less buyers. The prices go down because there are no buyers, right? There's plenty of people who are trying to buy. The millennials are now hitting 40. They're buying.
Everybody's buying.
But there's less traffic, which means there's less leads to give out. There's less hope. A lot of times for those teams, they're just selling the hope that, you know, hey, you're going to do some business because look at all these leads that are coming in. So that's certainly going to change. The other thing that's happening in our industry is they're calling it a silver tsunami. When you go on your recruiting, you know, visits, how many of those brokers are under 50? How many of them are under 60?
Right.
So you have an industry that's run by people with silver hair, gray hair, and how much longer do they plan on staying in the business? Now, real estate brokers almost never really retire, because if the phone's ringing, why would you stop answering it? But part 2 is they don't really know how to transition because they never built anything up, right? It's just still them. It's really just the glorified team operating as a brokerage.
I think you said that right on the money. And by the way, some of us haven't seen that because let's figure, we're still young, right? We haven't seen what 1999 kind of looked like back in the day. But I think it's going to come to realization in about a year or so.
Right.
There's a lot of agents that don't know any other market. You know, I got in the market. I saw the 2008 market, and I was in it. You
You started almost in 2007?
I started at
You
that
started
time.
as the market crashed.
I had very little
What a
bills.
great time.
Yeah, I had very little bills, so I learned a lot.
Mom made a lot of meatball lunches for us.
I mean, we literally, my mother made us cold cut sandwiches every day. We put enough money, enough gas money in the car to get to work, and we figured it out. And it was a great learning experience.
I
but
guess.
not one when you had
I would rather.
I'd rather have it your way than the other way, right? So in the pandemic time, we kind of left our great jobs, right? And we decided to become realtors because the
Right.
market was hot, right? But what am I really learning?
No, you didn't learn how to do real estate sales. You learned how to be an order taker, how to be a cab driver, how to open lock boxes, but you never really learned sales because you didn't have to sell anybody. People would just call and, hey, list my house, it was sold. Hey, I want to buy a house. All right, go to these open houses, call me which one you like. You didn't even have to show the houses.
You could have been a buyer's agent or a listing agent and have no negotiation skills whatsoever, and you're still getting
You're just
top dollar.
submitting offers, right? Oh, just send them in. So we're back to like sales, which is what you were talking about, going into offices and prospecting and trying to find the why. What needs can we solve, right? And that's what real estate sales also is. But a lot of those agents, they don't know it. But you're also going to have, we see it starting, agents who made a good living as real estate agents who are now taking jobs, right? How many people
That's correct.
we saw this in the 2000s where like people who were making money even in that down market took jobs with the city of New York, took jobs, doing garbage, figuring, I could also be a real estate agent, in my off hours. So that fear of 2008 is going to drive some people out of the business, which is good for those of us who stay, I guess. But coming from, where we were in 2008, this market's not scary. And I think that's why you hear these two different tracks of information right now. Oh my God, the market's going to be horrible. It's going to crash. Well, if you've only seen this market, yes. Oh my God, the market's going to be horrible. It's going to crash. Crash? You couldn't give someone a house in 2008. It's funny seeing some of my Facebook posts from like 2010. Buy this house in Plain Edge Schools for $225,000. I had to convince someone to buy that.
Yeah.
There should have been 10 people making an offer on that house. So, for us, we're not heading into a down market. But for an agent who got licensed 2 years ago, we sure are.
Some would believe that, by the way, but listen, I've always said it's based on stats and data, right?
Right.
So
Data
once
doesn't say
again,
it.
we go back to the education, right? So what have you really learned as an agent, right? Did your broker show you previous years? And the answer is no, he hasn't. You know why? Because he was out there hustling. He was actually getting the listings, going after the buyers, trying to basically, hey, let's house up all this money as much as we can, but not worry about the brokerage, right?
Right.
And this is the problem I have where I'm like, why, what's your why then? Is your why to just go after the market when it's hot, and when it's not hot, you go back down?
I mean, despite what people say their why is, for a lot of agents, a lot of brokers, their why is just making next month's bills.
Okay.
They can't see the long term, and sales always has a little bit of that, doesn't it? Like sales is more of a short term chase, you're chasing that short term result, but that's really not how brokerages should be run. Problem being, it's pretty easy to open a brokerage, right? Oh, you got 2 years experience in the business and, a couple bucks to apply to the state, get your broker license. So you don't really have a lot of people whose plan is to build a long-term sustainable business, which Jared and I look at as an opportunity because in a pool filled with a lot of average, and we'll say they're average, it doesn't take a lot to rise up, right? And that's Weichert in a market where there's tons of real estate franchise. I mean, there's got to be a couple dozen of them, maybe more.
It controls the market.
It's pretty easy to get into the top 10 as a franchise because you don't have to do a whole lot to get there. Now, can you get to the top 3 and move up? That's a little more difficult, but to get to the top 10 is not so hard.
Well, that's why I always go back to the data, right? So if your available market, right, let's just call it Farmingdale, right? The available market's 10 million, right? But you only got, let's call it 0.5% of that market. What are you really obtaining?
Right.
You know what I mean? Is there more pie? Is there something that it's itching to you to get more revenue, right? And how do you do it, right? That's the other answer, right? How do you do it, right? And I always go base that systems and tools, right? That's how you get it. You know what I mean? You could duplicate yourself, right? But you could also work a little smarter.
If you turn it into a math equation, you could put together systems and a checklist to get to that math.
The question always lies, Jared, is how many of us are willing to do it, right? So, at Weichert, we have these steps, right? And listen, it basically tells you do all these steps and it'll equate to a transaction a month. How many of us really do it? You know what I mean?
No, very few.
Yeah, right? So I always basically say, listen, what's in your why? What's your hunger game, right? So are you just basically going to the rise of the market, or are you going to play off where, hey, listen, everybody's telling me that the market's about to crash. I don't know what market's about to crash because I'm still going.
Apparently crypto.
Yeah, well.
and I don't know if it ever built up, but the NFTs, that never even really had a chance to become a market before it crashed. But
no one's going to click on an article that says home prices are going to slightly increase
and remain
rates
stable,
are
right.
going to remain somewhat stable but relatively high compared to pandemic levels. No one's going to click on that article.
Look, we have something here. Foreclosures are up. Okay, they're also at record lows.
Yeah,
they're up from what? Well, from 0 to 2 is up, but it's not 10. But one of your closes, I know one of your closes now. So you get to know them.
Don't give it up.
You get to you get to their why, you get to their interest. You know that you could sell. You know their life would be better if they joined Weicker, which makes part of your job a lot easier. But then you try to get them to meet to smoke or what?
And then basically you're trying to create, right, a better streamline for their vision, right? What's their exit strategy, right? So if I ask you guys, how much more do you guys have of this? What's your answer? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? Everybody always
20 years. I want to be on a beach.
You want to be on a beach,
Yeah.
right? So you know how many New Yorkers tell me that they, hey, T, maybe this is the year we're going to Florida.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're all back.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're all back. I tell you guys this because in Brooklyn, it was funny. I was just talking to this one particular client, really good client, by the way. And he basically told me like, hey, I'm going to go to Florida. And then he went to Florida and then he found out, man, it's more saturated than New York.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so guess what he did? He went back to Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So I tell everybody, listen, you can find your why, right? But let's keep it with stats, right? Data stats, right? So you have a revenue right now. You have a brokerage. What is this brokerage worth to you? What is this brokerage worth to someone else going into it?
Which is the more important question.
Right. And so this is the conversations I have with brokerages. Like, hey, there's got to be something of your why, and that why can continue to grow.
You're crazy if you're going to retire and relocate to start another brokerage. Like that's not doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
Let me ask you a question. Is it crazy where you start another area, or you basically have a friend that's in a particular area and you're like, hey, listen, under my license and I'll just pay
Right.
for your license over there and we'll do deals back and
Well,
forth.
we're seeing lots of that stuff.
Yeah.
Every New York team now is starting a Miami or a Naples, Florida team.
I've seen that all day long.
Cigars. I was trying to get to cigars.
Oh,
So
sorry.
you're a big cigar guy, right? Like that's one of your closes. Like, hey, let's get together and smoke some cigars.
Well, listen, I always say cigars is a lifestyle. So I don't really promote smoking cigars, right? So I started early, but it's just something that I personally like because it relaxes me, right? So let's go based on what relaxes you guys. Is it working out? Is it going around? Is it talking to people? Is it talking to your significant others? Well, mine is really like smoking a cigar and de-stressing. Talk about what's happening in the market. Talk about what's happening right now with your moment, right? And it just kind of helps where I talk to a lot of brokerages, guys. I talk to a lot of agents. I talk to a lot of brokers. And half of the time it's about family or something
Right.
religious, but it doesn't matter. That's what the cigars kind of brings out.
You want to talk about everything except selling them a franchise, right?
I will never talk about.
But at the end of the day, the more you could talk about everything else, the easier it is to sell the franchise. If you're talking a lot about whatever you're selling, whether it's real estate, my services as a listing broker, or a franchise, you don't want to talk a whole lot about that. And cigars is kind of a culture, but it slows you down. It's not a quick cigarette and back to work.
That's correct.
It's a water
how
cooler.
long?
There's a lot of water coolers. One is smoking a cigar. Another thing might be on a golf course.
That's right.
One might be on a boat. Right.
Glass of wine.
It's an opportunity to get together with somebody and have a conversation, whether it's leisure, whether it's business. It's a great thing to do.
Cigars take a long time too, which is part of it. Like you're building in yourself a good half hour. I don't know how long's an average cigar take.
You could have a 30-minute cigar, 60-minute cigar,
2-hour cigar. To tell you the truth, but listen,
You let it go out, you
when you're
relight
smoking
it.
cigars. Listen, the last thing I want to talk about is about your business. This is a de-stressor time, right? Let's go back to the word. How do you de-stress, right? So we're in the de-stressing, and it could be about a million things. You know what I mean? How do you de-stress? So I'm not talking to you about, a particular brokerage or about Weicker or about a systems, about a tools, because I'm not there to stress you more.
Right.
I'm there to de-stress you out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
What's your favorite cigar you've been smoking lately?
So listen, guys, it's no surprise. I like Nicaragua from East LA. So Drew Estates, I think, has one of the best cigars that I personally like. Liga Privada is a really good cigar.
So you know a little bit about cigars.
Yeah.
How does a guy from New York decide he wants to start a cigar company and have one of the premier, well-known cigar companies in Drew Estate?
Well, here's the problem.
I would think you have to be from Mexico, Nicaragua, Cuba. How does a New Yorker do that?
Well,
Dominican.
There's Dominicans, there's Honduras, there's Brazilian rappers. I mean, listen, anything from South America down, or say Central America down, by the way, you have a lot of types of cigars, right? But let's just say I wanted to start a cigar thing. I don't think it's about, creating a company just selling cigars, right? Because I'm selling a lifestyle.
Right.
How do you sit down there, right, in a nice area, and it's nice and toasty, the TV's on, maybe a game is on, right? And something that you're de-stressing. You're just talking to the guys, and we never talk about golf, and all of a sudden golf is on, and you're like, hey, tell me more about Tiger Woods, and all of a sudden you're just talking to people that you never talked to your whole life about one particular subject.
It's kind of like Jimmy Buffett, right? Like, his music's okay, but it's the whole lifestyle. Like, hey, you got to come here. It's about you're shivering in New York, but you're hanging out in a parking lot in September, talking about what it would be like to be in the Caribbean right now, listening to Jimmy Buffett music. So it's the same kind of thing with the cigar.
It's the same thing.
The cigar is only part. The actual quality of the cigar is, I guess, only part of the experience.
But
That
it's
is
still
correct.
crazy that just some New Yorker could open up a cigar company. It's one of the biggest cigar companies.
I've seen them all
Don't you
the
think
time.
New Yorkers could do anything better than most places?
They could ruin things just
Well,
as
that
good
too, yeah.
Well, listen. So I know friends that have cigar businesses, right? So that's all they like, cigar business, and they can't smoke inside the home. They go outside in their little pergola, right? It's cold right now, so no one really enjoys it, right? Because you're shaking your hands, right? So what they do? They open up a business, because they had some friends that smoke cigars, and they're like, hey, come on down, right? But when you go to a cigar lounge, I'm going to tell you guys, so it's not intimidating, number one. First of all, you don't have to smoke a cigar when you go to a cigar lounge. I want to make that
You got to buy one. You just don't have to smoke it.
You do have to smell like one when you walk out. You don't have a choice in that matter.
That is always there, right? But depends on the ventilators that they have, right? I've always said, like, some of these places, so let's talk about the pandemic time, because this drove me crazy. There's this great place in New Jersey, right, called JR Cigars, right? This place has, like, multiple ventilators. And I remember in the pandemic time, right, where I wanted the de-stressor, right? So I said, hey, I'm going to go up there and smoke a cigar, right? I couldn't even get inside the building of Weicker, just an FYI, guys. So I would go and smoke a cigar, right? And they have a million ventilators. And I remember this. They're like, hey, I got to write down your name and number in case you basically get hit. And I'm going like, with all these ventilators, one of us is going to get hit? I mean, if you ever went in there, basically it sucks up all the air out of you.
Yeah, purifies
all the
it.
germs are gone.
That's the only thing we didn't, use in the pandemic. We tried everything but ventilation, and we were surprised not a lot worked.
Well, a lot of stuff didn't work. I mean, listen, some of us got hit, some of us didn't get hit, and God bless. That's what I always tell everybody.
Cigar lounges definitely do better in the winter because less people are outside smoking.
Right. Never thought of that.
So I like the wintertime, but I also like the summertime. There's always something, right? So remember what I was telling you guys about the lifestyle? Do you guys like UFC? How about boxing? How about boxing, right?
Okay.
Do you remember when Mike Tyson came out and he did some of these promotional fights, right? It was pretty cool, right?
Yeah. That was what? That was like a year ago?
More than
Was it
a year
more?
ago. Yeah, before pandemic. Yeah, before.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny, right? We talk about pandemic, but we don't really remember the year.
yeah,
It's like
blur.
it all goes like water, right? But I go back to imagine if it was just a summer, or let's just say, we're there to celebrate our birthdays, right? And it could be a cigar lounge, right? But we're outside. I go back to that's a lifestyle. You know what I mean? So here you are, you're talking to your friends. Everybody's talking a lot of smack, right? But you're feeling good about yourself, right? Well, that's the reason I go to a cigar shop. You feel good about, having a conversation and not talking about your daily means, right? What's happening in your world, what's happening in your job, You're going there to de-stress.
It's a break from reality.
It's a
Or
break
it
from
could be.
reality.
It could be if you want it to be.
So I'm a guy, I don't like the big cigars. It's like it lasts too long. It's too much for me already.
In high school, you used to smoke those, what are they, backwoods?
Backwoods. So I was going to say, my experience with cigars is backwoods and then the Capones.
Oh my God, really?
So for a guy like me, what kind of cigar should I be looking for?
So I wouldn't give you a cigar, right? I would bring you in, right? And so we usually have like a water, a coffee, right? And we're just chit-chatting, right? Because at this moment, you got to smell the aroma, right?
Yeah, well, I've been there. I mean, I've been, I've smoked cigars. I just don't always enjoy them. I like the smaller ones a lot better. But like, is there a region that has more milder cigars?
There's a million. Listen, if you look at every region has mild cigars, just so you know, right? But there's one called Acid Cuba, right? So this thing is infused of like, I call it perfumania, right?
So acids are flavored.
Yeah, acid is a flavor, guys. It's a type of cigar, and Drew Estate actually sells these cigars, by the way, guys. And you got to smell this. It's like every time I smell it, by the way, because my nose can't take it anymore, by the way. It reminds me I'm kind of like in a high mood. So I feel like I'm high without having any type of drugs.
You sure you're going to the right cigar lounge?
It's the right cigar lounge, right? But for someone that's
he's a little elevated just talking about cigars.
Yeah.
But I tell you this, right? So here you are, you go in there and you're like, oh, I didn't know that cigars had this type of scent. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm loving this. Maybe I should try it, right? And that's what I always tell everybody. Without you knowing what you like versus what you don't like, how would I give you a cigar to try out? Right. You know what I mean? It's almost like, hey, I have this great Bordeaux. Let's have some Bordeaux, right? And you don't like this type of wine. You know what I mean? So Scotch is the same. Listen, I always call it a lifestyle, right? So regardless of what you do in your life, if you like Coke, Pepsi, whatever, everything has a different flavor, right? But it's based on your lifestyle. You know what I mean? It's based on your lifestyle. And I'm never going to convince you that one is better than the other.
If you want to get in a good fight, find a really loyal Coke drinker and a really loyal Pepsi drinker and try to convince them the other one's better.
Do they exist anymore?
Yeah, they sure do.
I mean,
I believe that.
I prefer Coke, but I'm not going to have a hissy fit if there's a Pepsi at the pizzeria I go to.
I couldn't.
In fact,
it doesn't matter to me.
Most pizzerias I go to, I think, have Pepsi on their machines.
Well, I only find that insulting when I go to like a particular restaurant, like a pizzeria, like you said, right? And I tell them, hey, can I get a small Coke? I only got Pepsi. In my mind, I'm going, like, what's the difference?
Why'd you even correct me?
Can I tell you the truth? You don't have either. You have some knockoff syrup that you're selling.
But I always tell everybody, like, what's the difference, right? But I'm not that guy to tell you.
But if I said to you, you asked me for a Cuban cigar, and I handed you one from Brazil,
right?
You would be like, "What is this?"
Yeah, completely different. And I've been. That's what I'm trying to tell you, right? Not everybody is acclimated with everything, right? And it's the lifestyle choices that you made that you like. You know what I mean? So
we talked a little bit before, and we were.
Are you going to do it?
Me and you were getting a little heated.
Oh, I don't.
Bringing your bags to the supermarket. You got to bring them now.
So I don't know about you guys, but I'm married to a Chief Wacky Wacky where she makes a list and she goes, hey, you got to go to the X supermarket and buy this. Maybe I'm the only guy in the world, by the way. I got a list and I never buy anything off the list.
Supermarkets are distracting. There's a lot to choose from.
Well,
you got to go to a supermarket with a list. Otherwise, forget it.
So
I purposely never grab a cart. I grab one of those handheld baskets. And when it's full, it's over.
Yeah, you look like the guy from Planet Fitness commercials walking around with the two baskets overflowing, right?
One basket, and then like two things,
and like a watermelon. You're balancing.
So, by the way, does your wife kind of give you a list and say like, hey, section 1 has produce,
no.
section? Oh no, it's all over, right?
Oh, the list is all over the place. When there is,
I rewrite it. I'll rewrite it.
I rarely get a list, but when I do, yeah, it's like. First, you got to grab the milk because that's number one on the list.
Then canned tomatoes and then apples. No. You walk in the produce section. So you start. I need the list. Produce, meat, milk, dairy. Then the grocery items.
So who rewrites the list for you?
I mean, I'll put it in my phone or something. But
so you rewrote the list. See, so she made you rewrite the list. So my chief.
I mean, to be fair. Our list are probably starting out as a text message anyway. So
that's how it starts. Oh no, mine actually writes it in the index cards, right? But it's all over. It's all over. And then
what I do is I mentally will route it, and then of course I'm like all the way at the end. No, and then I miss something. I have to walk all the way back.
Well, I'm vice versa.
Well, then you get to the checkout, and you finally I got everything I needed. You did the calculations. What was the sale price? Which brand was cheaper today? The Palio, the Sargento. All the dumb things you got to do in the supermarket. Then you get to the checkout. And now you got to go back to your car to get the bags. Do you just buy the bags, or do you do the let me see how much I can balance?
So let me tell you, I'm all about let's get rid of the plastic bags. So yeah, listen, guys, I went out and I didn't have a plastic bag. I went in there and I bought a plastic bag. Did you guys ever read what's in the plastic bag? After like 100 times, this bag will disintegrate, right? And here's the problem. I meant to get the bags in my car because my wife put them in the car. I forgot they were in the trunk. And then I get to the actual store and they're like, hey, buy this bag. It's only 99 cents.
Right.
Or buy this better bag at 1.99 cents.
Right.
And then guess what? I just become a macho man and I said, I don't need no stinking bag.
Yep.
I just grab everything with my go bionic arms, right? Here I am. Everything's falling off of my arms. People are like,
you
hey.
drop the pickles, that's smashed. You got you come home, all the cans look like you shopped the dented clearance section, but it's just because you were trying to balance them as you open your car door.
So I'm gonna tell you guys this is a true story. It happened, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. I got so mad. So the wife said, hey, we're gonna have tacos, so bring black beans. Okay, that's all I remember. Black beans. Don't ask me what else I bought. I bought stuff that I personally needed. So here comes this can of beans, right? It's in my arm. And it falls through. Man, this old lady, I felt so bad. That thing was just rolling, and I said, forget it. I'll just go home without it. I'll just go home without it, right? She goes and races all the way down the actual area, picks up the thing. She's like, sir, you dropped this. Now, I came, so I'm just naturally like, hey, thank you so much, right? But I went in the back of my pocket, and I grabbed my wallet. Think about how dumb this sounded, right? I grabbed my wallet, and I'm like, hey, I want to thank you so much. Here's a... And I was about to take money, like giving her a tip. And I was like, wait, happy holidays. And I put it back in my pocket. I put it back in my pocket and I said, okay, this is not for me.
That lady hasn't left the house since. She's afraid of the public. She's
Probably,
like, there's some wackos. I almost got killed today.
Well, at least tell the wife, why can't you just come with me? We can conquer two things. You know, my brain can't operate.
I buy the reusable bags from the supermarket. It's a $1. And it's a nice big bag, so you can fit a lot in. Usually you don't need two. Like, so I'll have the bag and the stuff. And like, how ridiculous. I'm buying reusable bags and then they get thrown out because I have hundreds of them at this point. The Target bags, everybody's got those, fabric Target bags that used to be paper bags or plastic bags. Now they're reusable bag. How many of those are getting reused?
We have no problem spending an extra $1.60 on Heinz, instead of the knockoff, for
ketchup,
an extra 30 cents on Campbell's, except for the other. But God forbid we buy those 5-cent bags. We can't get our mental mind around it.
Well, I always go back, right? When does it stop? When do we stop with these plastic bags? Right?
I'm tired of having to prepare for everything I do. Like I'm going on a camping trip to go to the supermarket to buy groceries for my kids so they could eat, and I got to remember bag. You know how much I got to remember all day? I got to do this too. And at some point, I was at the.
There's somebody hopefully listening to this, rolling their eyes.
Yeah, big problems. I know. Listen, I get it, but.
A lot of them are going to say yeah, and others are going to be like, well, they kind of have a point with these plastic bags.
I just want to be able to, I wanted to go to the supermarket. I wanted to leave with this stuff on the way home from work. Now I'm preparing. I'm remembering things.
Thanks for listening to Those Real Estate Brothers with Joseph and Jared. Subscribe now to get updates
you get to the point where it's just
episodes.
like,
and
I wish things were the way they used to be. And it's like, oh my God, did I just say that out loud in my head? I feel like I'm like 95 years old. Back in my day, they gave you bags.
You sound like all those people on Facebook.
And be nice.
Well, listen, I guess I'll be the Facebook thing, right? But I remember about before we actually decided to do these no plastic bags, right? Because if you go to Florida, they give you a plastic bag, guys. That's a fact, okay? But in here, they don't give you plastic bags. But I'm going to give you something even more. About 2 or 3 years ago, they experimented where they had the plastic bags, and then you recycle them, and you put it back in this big container, and then they reused them.
Yep. Disgusting.
Okay, we decided to just do a switcheroo on the plastic bags, right? And this is not a conversation about plastic bags. The conversation really lies, hey, what other guys? I guess I'm not the only guy out there, right? That, hey, listen, I'm only going to buy a certain thing that fits my arms versus like, you know what, helping this economy and buy more stuff. Or I put more burden on the wife. Let's face it, that's the ultimate thing. I put more burden on the wife.
Well, now you do we've switched to like the online ordering, BJ's or the supermarket. Yeah. You order it online and then you text when you get there and they bring it out to your car. So now they have to put it on 42 bags instead of me. So it changes everything. I mean, look, if it helps the environment, good, but I'm not so sure. At some point it's like,
You know what helped the environment? Go natural gas.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like my bags are so important to the world while Elon Musk flies all over the country on a private jet, but it's my bags that killed all the turtles. Okay. All of the Florida coastline has been developed by billionaires. There's, that millionaire row, you got to be a billionaire to own a house on. But, I'm killing the sea turtles by owning, 3 plastic bags on a Tuesday at the
I only question, what do we do with our ShopRite plastic bags versus the garbage bags? What's the difference with those plastic bags?
Where does
What's the difference?
It's signaling, right? Like apparently
you just gave the lawmakers an idea.
Yeah.
If I give them ideas, let me be the lawmaker.
Tiago, straws and plastic bags is the only environmental problem. Everything else is
No,
okay.
yeah.
Keep doing it. But straws and plastic bags is where we draw the line.
Well, that's why I always tell everybody, really. I'm sorry about that. If that's the end of the line, man.
Look, if that is, then all right. I'll do paper straws and paper bag reusable things.
Thanks for listening to Those Real Estate Brothers with Joseph and Jared. Subscribe now to get updates on future episodes, and please share it with others. Want to connect? Message us on Google, Facebook, Instagram, or text. We'll see you next time. And remember to always work hard and be nice.